Noted.
I think we're ready.
You tell us when you're ready. Can I just do this and start then? Everyone? I'm getting no acknowledgement. Is it okay? Okay. Hello and good morning while you still set up back there. Liz Larson, Senator from District 10. Welcome to the Democratic Caucus press conference here. Just a few highlights of the week from our side. There is continuing advancement of legislation that increases the state's role in certain personal decisions. There's House Bill 1257, now headed to the governor's office, which rewrites and expands the definition of South Dakota's abortion statutes, and HB 313, which requires public schools to show student prenatal development instructional videos, which can be made by any organization except hospitals, clinics, and associations of medical doctors. Both passed the Senate this week, and HB 1274 passed Senate State Affairs. That bill bans and criminalizes the facilitation or the provision of certain medications used to treat miscarriage and other uses. So I would encourage people who are interested in that to follow those. We keep asking a simple question. Do these policies actually help people and make things clearer for families and providers? The South Dakota State Medical Association and the South Dakota Association of OBGYNs testified against some of these. And while intending to clarify these items, these bills have introduced an amount of uncertainty for doctors, parents, minors as to who is guilty of what crime, including what pregnant minors, parents, or doctors. So do these bills help women and children? And I would encourage the voters of South Dakota to answer that for themselves. On a more positive note, this is the time of year where we get to see some good things come through, especially on the budget side. And I was glad to see that the VOCA funding continues to move forward this week, although we're still waiting for those final totals. And that funding is incredibly important to keep victim services running across South Dakota, including women's shelters and for survivors of domestic violence. Many shelters, especially in the rural part of our state, depend on this advocacy, and they depend on this as a safe place to stay. Keeping that funding stable means those services are still there when people need them. And we're also continuing to push forward our own spending priorities and as the funding decisions are being made. School lunches, TANF, food security, strengthening Medicaid so that rural hospitals feel the support that they need. So these are the practical ways that our state can work on affordability issues, lower cost and support families, and that's what our party has been about all session. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. State Representative Erin Healy from District 10. So we've talked about this a lot in previous conferences, but Democrats have been working on a plan that would provide relief not only to homeowners, but to also to renters with a reduction in the grocery tax. And of course, we didn't see that pass a few weeks ago, but just wanted to reiterate that 1/3 of South Dakotans do not own a home. And they truly deserve help too, but we're not seeing that in any of our property tax relief plans. Instead, Senate Bill 245 creates what I see as a permanent solution to what is a temporary problem. It sets a clear example of politics being placed above good policy. Property taxes naturally rebase over time. So locking something like this into law is really tying the hands of future legislators. This bill prioritizes higher value homes while leaving many working families out. It doesn't provide any relief to schools that rely on property taxes, and it raises sales tax without offering a broader relief. And because of that, Democrats can't support this bill. We also want to talk a little bit about the governor's proposal. It's a larger point that South Dakotans have been asking us for lower costs for everybody, but still we're only seeing property tax relief. As we continue to talk today about this vote on the House floor today on Senate Bill 96, we've really discovered that there are a lot of key stakeholders who have been left out of this conversation, and that's really disappointing to hear this morning when we're so close to a vote. We also have learned that House Republicans were included in this conversation, but no one else was, ourselves included. We were not included in that conversation about Senate Bill 96. And I think that we need to remember that broader voices always need to be included when we're talking about shaping policy of this magnitude. So it's just really disappointing that we're hearing from those stakeholders on how they weren't a part of this conversation, they weren't a part of this decision. And it's going to greatly impact a lot of different people. It's going to impact it's going to impact education and healthcare, public safety, state government. So what we're seeing now is just a last minute coalition of a few people trying to push through a deal that leaves many South Dakotans behind. From the very beginning, Democrats have been very clear about property tax relief, that we think it's really important, but it also should include renters. When we're talking about tax relief, that should include more than just property owners. To shift things a little bit, my bill, House Bill 1183, passed through Senate Judiciary. It will be heard on the Senate floor today. The bill basically updates South Dakota's Good Samaritan laws, so it includes overdose immunity when somebody else makes a phone call for the person who's overdosing. So just a little bit of a clear up bill, but basically the goal is really simple. When someone's life is at risk, people should be calling for help without fear that that friend of theirs is going to get in trouble and get a felony or misdemeanor. We've really appreciated bipartisan support on that bill. As other bills are coming out of committee, I think Senate Appropriations is hearing 1082 right now, the school lunch bill. So again, we're just really thankful for a lot of bipartisan support on a lot of our legislation. We're really hopeful that Senate Appropriations sends that to the floor next week so we can potentially be helping out more kids who are in need of lunches. Representative Whitman has been working really hard for a balanced proposal, and I think that's what we're seeing. And we're just really proud of the progress that she's made on behalf of South Dakota families on this issue. And with that, I think we're ready for questions.
Representative, you mentioned the Good Samaritan bill, and there's similar legislation in neighboring states. Could you just speak to, was there anything that motivated you to bring this piece of legislation? Is there anything that, could you just speak to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually was reached out to by an attorney in Sioux Falls who has had this happen 3 different times where they had a client overdose, somebody else made the phone call, and because somebody else made the phone call, they were charged with, I believe, a felony for ingestion. And so the judge had made it very clear that this is a legislative fix. It's not a judicial review fix, that we actually have to go back in and fix the statute in order to allow people who call on behalf of others who have overdosed to not be charged with that first time offense.
You'd mentioned on SB 96 that there were a number of stakeholders left out. Which ones?
We're hearing that almost everybody was left out. We know that the education was left out. I'm just hearing from lobbyists in the hallway that they're all just kind of scrambling now and talking to legislators about how it's going to impact their own issues and impact their own areas that they're lobbying for. But I do know for a fact that a number of them were left out, and they're just kind of feeling a little overwhelmed right now with the vote coming up just today. Yeah, and like I mentioned, Democrats were left out of this too. It's sounding like the House Republican leadership was the only crew that was included in this conversation. We, of course, have spoken to the governor about this bill, and it was really nice of him to stop by and to talk to us about it. But we didn't have any part in drafting the legislation, and that's kind of what we're discovering now today is no one really was a part of that.
I guess not that saying y'all shouldn't have been a part of the conversation, but I'm a little lost on this idea that how y'all were almost blindsided. His legislation has been out there for months. So how are people scrambling about something that's been floating around for months?
Great question. I think 245 is the perfect example of that. We were blindsided by that, and that is part of the governor's proposal. And 245 was brought to State Affairs Monday morning in a form of a hog house, dropped on us, voted on, and then we discussed it on Wednesday. And it was that's a very clear example of politics over really focusing on what can be done for all South Dakotans and what the best solution is, because I don't think 245 is a good solution at all, and I do believe it's going to die hard on the House floor today.
So it's a combination of that bill and the governor's bill?
Correct. Yes, it's kind of like their package of bills, if you wanna call it that. 245 is included in that, 96 is included in that, and there's a number of other bills. I wish I had the spreadsheet in front of me right now, but there's a number of other bills that they've included in that.
Can you better explain why you think education should have been involved in this?
I think when you're looking at taking any funds away from education, which is exactly what 245 would do, 245 is taking a certain percentage of that tax increase over the next year and putting it into its own fund. That money should be going back to the general fund. That money should be utilized to help education, because we're seeing so many pain points. We've been talking this whole entire session about how we can't fund education. Well, part of the problem is we're spreading the burden even further by increasing sales tax and then taking money away from the general fund, and we know that almost half of that amount in the general fund goes to education. And so I think they're directly impacted by this decision that we're making today.
Well, I looked at the bill again this morning, and it said, and the legislature sets the levies for education, and it says that money from the 0.3% would go into the fund, and that would then be used to reduce the levies. But I guess I don't see, the legislature still has, in effect, the law that says the lesser of 3% or inflation. And there was an attempt this year to change that, and it did not get through. So I guess I don't see how these fit together.
I guess the problem is we're not even following that. We're not even following that statute right now. We're not taking we're not even following the algorithm, I don't know what you wanna call it, the calculation. And I think this year is a really good example. We're giving 0% to education instead of either the 3% or the rate of inflation. We're giving 0%.
But
Is that 1.5 now?
I thought that's, yeah.
Is that 1.5?
What
But it's
is-
still, that's still under the rate of inflation and under 3%.
And I don't think, that hasn't been fully decided yet.
Yeah, it's,
What is the
not
rate
set
of
in stone.
inflation?
that's a great question. I don't know what the rate of inflation is right now, do you?
I think it's 2.6 or something, sounds right, I was
Yeah.
gonna say a little bit higher than that, but, yeah.
It's what?
Under 3%, just under 3%, somewhere between, did you say 2.8?
2.6 or so.
2.6.
Just staying on this topic, you said 245 is gonna die hard on the floor. I don't think that's, did you mean 96?
No, I think 245 is going to die today on the floor. I don't know about 96.
Okay, I didn't see it on the schedule, but,
Yeah. 245 isn't?
No.
It must be on Monday then, yeah. 96 is on the schedule today.
so,
245 must have been amended in committee, which is why we'll probably be hearing it on Monday.
yeah, okay, so to be clear then, on the sales tax, the Democratic position is you wanted it to go back up to full 4.5% next year and go to the general fund. Is that the,
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the Democratic position is also, like what you said, but we're also advocating for, tax relief to be spread across, both property owners and non-property owners. And to us, that means usually a reduction or a repeal of grocery tax. So we're also advocating for that.
We
but
just
voters
don't-
have just said, we don't wanna do that. I mean, and they've taught, I mean, that was just decided, so why would you be pushing something that voters just said want nothing to do with?
on the grocery tax? I don't think that was a good proposal either.
South Dakota, on that note, like, not that that a regressive tax is a great solution, but South Dakota would still have very much so one of the lowest sales tax rates in the state. So like, is it just a matter of, hey, we should keep looking further, or do y'all really feel like this is a very devastating move?
I think it's a matter of all South Dakotans needing some sort of relief. A large portion of South Dakotans are not homeowners, and we're shifting the burden to everybody rather than just the property tax owners or property owners. And I think knowing that sales tax is regressive. Until we solve that problem and find a solution that works for all South Dakotans, we're not going to stand for any kind of policy that shifts that burden.
Well, getting back to your comment about the grocery tax ballot measure, what would you have done differently on that?
That's a great question. I wasn't the one who drafted it. I don't know what I would do differently. There have been a number of different proposals in the past that I think were just problematic because of the way that it would be implemented or everything that it included. I know that some included even like liquor sales and I believe cigarettes, just the way that it was written. And so we're looking at true relief on grocery items. I'm not the person who's going to bring that solution because that's just not my wheelhouse. But there are people in our caucus that have brought solutions that are good.
And it's just it's been a long-term demand, at least in our district, to see changes with food tax. And at least get away from just regressive taxes and make our tax base a little bit more speaking to people's individual situations and a little bit more fair and equal for everybody.
Shifting gears a little bit off of taxes, this school lunch bill, Senator, that's coming up soon in the Senate. And obviously, we're not privy to the conversations that you're having with your colleagues, but I've heard everything from it's gonna pass to it's gonna be a close vote. Just based on what you're hearing, and I don't wanna have to ask you to look into the crystal ball, but how do you predict that conversation's gonna go?
I wish I had my crystal ball. I would say that, we're really excited with the headway that's been made just over the last year in terms of a lot of people signing on from all sides of the political spectrum. I think that in our state, like other states across the United States, this is becoming a pretty bipartisan issue. So I hope that it continues on. Like you said, I don't have my crystal ball, and if I did, that'd be pretty great, wouldn't it? But we're really hopeful about it, and we have enjoyed seeing the more widespread bipartisan support of it this year.
A cell phone ban is, I believe, being heard in House today. I think there's some great arguments on both sides as far as, wanting to make sure that we have our students that are focused and not being destroyed by just predatory algorithms, but also at the same time, there are like safety concerns and kind of overstepping school policies. Just with all of that in mind, did y'all have any strong thoughts about it? You've already voted on it, so just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Sure. I'm not sure there's no silver bullet with cell phone school usage, but all that we know is that it's really bad for students on all levels of performance, psychologically, academically, to have access to cell phones in school. It diverts their attention and causes a variety of other problems. So we know that we want to tackle that in some way, and I'm not sure necessarily what the most appropriate way is, but I think it's going to have to be more than just having one-on-one discussions with different families across South Dakota about how they choose to do it in their own home. There needs to be some type of solution and a greater acknowledgement of really the damage that this kind of distraction can pose.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting bill because SDA is a proponent of it, but then the superintendents are an opponent of it, and I definitely see both sides of the issue. I think that if this bill were to pass, it levels the playing field, so every school now has a policy. But at the same time, it is a local control issue, and we should be letting school districts decide what's best for their students. So I quite honestly don't even know that this is truly a bill where you listen on the floor and you decide how you're going to vote based off of what you're hearing. But I agree, like there's nothing good comes from having a phone that is distracting to students during the school day.
If we could jump back to the school aid question one more time. The legislature and the governor, the Republicans in the legislature and the governor aren't going to follow the law. What can the Democrats do about it? Can you take them to court?
I don't think we would do that. I don't think I think all we can do is talk about it and really get people to understand that that we aren't following state statute and something does need to be done about it. And I think we need to continue to talk about it so more people understand that. And if we care about education, then we're going to start electing people who are willing to follow state statute or improve it. I know that Nicole Uribalk, Representative Uribalk, had a bill this year that would have strengthened that fund, the aid to education. So we need to keep talking about that and keep bringing bills and keep up the conversation.
Yep.
Anything else?
All right.
Sounds good. Have a good week.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, once again, we're excited to be here with you guys, and we're ready to answer your tough questions. And we have some people here that love tough questions, and then we have myself who will take the easy questions because I really like those. But we've had, how many drafts now? 1,917 drafts, and that's, all the amendments and everything else, which means that our Legislative Research Council has been very busy. We have the 325 House bills, and we have the 245 Senate bills, and we also have the House resolutions and the Senate resolutions and things like that. And you're probably wondering how many bills the governor signed, and you might even know, but it's 91 as of this morning. And he has several on his desk, and it's going to be a busy time for him. He's got to have a couple pens because he'll run out of ink otherwise. But we're ready for excitement here. People talk about letting the dust settle. We just have today, 4 days next week, and veto days, so there's not a lot of time left, but we're going to do as much as we can in that short period of time. And thank you guys for having us.
So some of the things I think that are probably the big remaining, the big rocks that are left out there are property tax and the budget and what we're gonna get done for state employees and K-12 and local providers. And we continue, that's a little bit fluid as we do that. And then also where we're gonna wind up with our one-timers. We've passed quite a few of them already. A couple that kind of ring the bell, I think, for most folks is $8 million for Ellsworth to repair the road infrastructure out there. And I think $5 million for rural infrastructure for rural counties. We got that through. And we're gonna keep chipping away at them. We're passing all the priorities from the Senate and from the House. And we've also passed the governor's 4 priorities, which are the state airplane for the highway patrol and the funding for the infrastructure out in Sturgis and tech schools, and then of course to tear down the minimum security unit here. But there's still some more work to do, and we'll find out where we're at in the next coming days.
Good morning. Well, yeah, the House is running really well, and I think the House and the Senate are running well together. I was listening to what Senator Meloff was saying, and yeah, the priorities are getting passed. I think the deals are holding, and the budget, I think, it's really moving faster and better than I've probably seen in the past years. We got bills we're moving out. We've got some bills hanging out there yet. There's some vehicle bill out there yet. There's some bills that we send over and they have, but I'm not seeing any real, I suppose, yeah, it's bad to say the wheels could fall off at any time. We've all been here, but I think things are running really smooth with both chambers, with the governor's office. Yeah, so I'm hoping to get out of here early. How about that for a call?
Well, good to be with you all this morning. I'm not usually part of this crew, but it's good to be here when I can. So again, as these guys really covered all the main things, but I look at the process that we've been through this year. I do think it has worked really well. I'm hearing from appropriators that they are ahead of schedule again, probably in better shape in that area that we've ever been. And so that's a great thing. I know our committee work, we basically, in the policy committees on our side at least, I believe we've wrapped everything up. I had my last committee yesterday for House Commerce and Energy, and so all of that is it's just a well-oiled machine this year. Obviously, there's the property tax relief bills are still out there. From what I hear from people, that is the biggest concern across the state. So those we will have, we'll be hearing those soon in the chambers. And well, we'll see what survives, what doesn't. And so, but that is the biggest thing. I think that what we're hearing from people that they want to see something come out of this session. And is it going to be a perfect package? Probably not. what survives, what dies, it remains to be seen, but I'm hopeful that we can get some kind of meaningful property tax for the people this year.
Well, on the property tax issue, your Democratic colleagues were in here earlier and said that 245 is dead. It's a goner. Do you, on the House floor, have you whipped that?
$245 dead, that's a pretty good call. I mean, I guess they're just like calling it already, which is pretty, I guess that's pretty presumptuous when you only have 5 votes, but we'll see where they come in at. I don't, it's not my job to whip the votes right now on that. That's not on my plate, but I know there's people that are. I haven't checked with them yet this morning. The important thing to remember is we got a lot to do yet. Yeah, 4 days next week sounds like a very short time, but it's not. This is how it always comes down to the last week, how we get things done, deals get made. And so I'm not gonna sit out there and say any bill is just dead, because I don't think that's true. What you feel one way in a bill today, by Thursday next week or Wednesday next week, you could feel different because things are changing continuously. So, I don't know, I think that's a little, yeah, I'll just not comment more.
If I could just ask, what'd they say about Senate Bill 96? It is up today. Yep. Did they give you their?
That they're scrambling because they didn't have any of the education, all these other stakeholders were not part of the conversations, and now they're scrambling to lock in support. That was what they said.
Well, I'll just comment a little bit on that, and I can comment on how the Senate's been. We've been very palms up with our caucus and included everybody on all the discussions that we've had with the governor's office and with the House. And right now, the ball is in the House's court, and we've already passed Senate Bill 96, so they have that up today, and 243. If they can get that over to us, then we'll go to work on that next week. So 245, I think.
On a similar note, and Representative, we touched on this a little bit yesterday when we spoke, but, in that process of getting a workable coalition together for something like 96 and 245 to make it out of committee, could you take us through the process that's not quite whipping votes, but, getting everybody together on something that appears to be workable as we move toward the last week of session?
Sure. So, as we talked about yesterday, this state is very diverse. Douglas County, where I live, doesn't have a motorcycle rally every year that brings in millions of dollars, or a mall like Sioux Falls does, right? So you're not gonna ever find one plan that's probably gonna fit everybody. It's gonna probably be this part of this plan, part of this plan, part of this plan, where everybody gets a little something, but not everybody gets everything they want. In property tax, if you don't have a big tourism and you lower property tax by using an extra sales tax, it's kind of the same people paying the tax. It's just getting there a different way. But in the areas where you have events that bring in millions of dollars, then it probably looks different. So that's why I'm saying is we got a long week next week, a lot of different people.
On that supposed inequity.
Yeah, I would comment on that. I think what the plan is when the 4.2 goes to 4.5, assuming that it does, that money would be sequestered and used to buy down the mill levy for education. Now, throughout this session, you've heard me talk about how I believe that's what the problem is with our property tax issues, is that linkage, the setting of the mill levy at the state level and then the way it hits the individual school districts and counties creates a lot of these hot spots that we have. So I think getting more people involved in funding education is a good thing, because right now I think funding education is disproportionately on the backs of property owners and probably owner-occupied property owners. There's been a shift over the last few years, a little bit more towards that group, and this would provide some relief to that demographic. So I think it widens the tax base to fund education, and everybody should have some skin in the game when it comes to funding education, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. One of the important things that we're doing is, this reminds me of the game I've told you before, whack-a-mole in a carnival. You know, if you push this down, something comes up somewhere, everything has to be paid for somehow. And, you know, if all of us are part of the equation, part of the pay, I think that is good. This is the one thing that this legislative process has been. I think we've been very predictable, and we've also been very transparent. I think that we are in a position where we're answering your questions as well as we can. And I know that we're on property tax right now, but I was hoping you would ask a question about the abortion and all those things that went through. 1257 and 1313, which are both the bills that have to do with that, are going to the governor's desk. So we're having a lot of little successes right now. And we're just, right now, we are really working on property tax, and we'll have that done. We still have 5 days to do it, so I'm confident we'll be fine.
I would say I agree with everything that the leader said. I thought he explained it really well. You know, there's a couple of facts that we're gonna leave with here this year that really bother me. And, you know, just the sales tax going from 4.2 to 4.5 is a huge hit on our number one industry. Farmers and ranchers buying equipment are gonna get hit when this sunset goes away, right? So we just have to be careful, I think, in the future that we don't continually go to sales tax increases every time we need money. That to me, that's the scary part about doing this. But, you know, I think who's ever here in the future can hang on to that. At least I hope they can.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I thought farmers get certain sales tax exemptions on ag equipment.
No, there's exemptions for a lot of things on the farm and the ranch, but not equipment. No, there's sales tax on equipment. They do get exempted from city tax. So if you don't pay the 2%, but they'll go from 4.2 to 4.5, and then on $1 million combine, that's a lot of money.
So when we were debating about why data centers shouldn't get these sales and use tax exemptions, and they were comparing it to the way that the ag industry, like what is that referring to then?
Well, like there's on livestock feed, there's no sales tax, that kind of thing. There's exemptions there. But on equipment, they pay sales tax. And it's every time. So you buy $1 million combine right now, this is John Deere's new combine. That combine will get sold probably 6 times in its lifetime. And every time it pays to the value of it at that time, it's gonna pay more sales tax. And that's a big hit on our number one industry. Now, I'm not saying it's one they can't stand. I'm just saying we have to be careful as a state that sales tax and sales tax increase is not always the answer.
Could I just add something to this conversation a little bit here? You know, there were some of us, when we started out this year, we wanted cuts to government. There was not the appetite in the legislature to do that. And so this is what we're left with at the end of the day. And the way that I look at this is we did try to hold, some of us wanted to hold the sales tax at 4.2%. Again, didn't get that done. And so here we are at the end of the day, people are asking for property tax relief. There are some of us, this isn't the plan that we would have picked, right, from the beginning. But what we saw was 4.2 to 4.5 was going to happen. It is going to happen whether we like it or not. And so that, you know, we're looking at about $110 million that we're going to be taking in. So it's gonna get spent. And what is it going to get spent on? So I believe this is a responsible plan to at least say, we're going to earmark this right now while we can for property tax relief. And so, you know, that's kind of where I sit on 245 and the reasoning for supporting it.
One of the one of the other points Democrats made today was that the legislature is not going to live up to the requirement on state aid to schools in terms of 3% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. What do you expect the legislature to provide this year to schools for state aid?
Well, it's easy to say what we're not going to do before we tell you what we are going to do. And the governor, I think he came out and said 1%, and I know that the majority leader will visit with you a little bit more, but we're hoping that we can enhance that. It's never over till it's over, and we're not done yet.
I would just elaborate on that with respect to education. And maybe you're aware, maybe you're not, but I actually brought a bill to remove the index factor from the school aid formula. And the reason I wanted to remove it is because in the last 28 years, I think we've followed that law 10 times. And most of the time when we don't follow that law, we provide above the index factor of 3%. I believe the index factor this year, I think, is around 1.44. I don't know that for a fact. And I think our appropriators are working to find money to get pretty close to that this year. And frankly, like I said, I don't think we should have the index factor in statute because we don't follow it. When times are good, we spend more on K-12 education. When times are tough, everybody suffers, including education.
There was mention of some conversations between Republican leadership and the governor when it comes to this kind of package of property tax relief bills. What really signaled to you guys the need for this kind of combination of legislation when it comes to property tax relief?
So what I would say on that is the governor reached out to the legislature and he made some pretty, what I would call some pretty major concessions. I've made some pretty major concessions. I'm not a fan of taking $55 million out of reserves to kickstart that program, but that's part of the plan. I do like the 3% to buy down the mill levy. Of course, the governor's sales tax plan, that had already passed the Senate. Now, there's a couple of other elements to that I think I would call are more peripheral, which is Senator Elward and, or not, Representative Elward and Senator Howard's bill. I forget the number, that's a 1233 maybe, or 1223. Yeah, to broaden the length of time that people have to refer decisions of local governments. We're still working on that. There's not a consensus that that's the way to go. I think that needs a lot of work before that gets through. Representative Leader Odenbach's bill, working on the Olympic average to try to bring more predictability to assessments. That one has some concerns that people brought up, and we're going to continue to work on that, and we'll see where it all shakes out. But I think primarily Senate Bill 96 and 245 are the big pieces of that equation, and then if we can get those across, I think we will have accomplished something significant for property taxpayers.
Yeah, that, what I was mentioning earlier, to go with your question is, it has to be both chambers and the governor working together, both giving and both receiving some things what they like. For me personally, it's really hard for me to like sales tax for property tax relief. But I know that if I want to get something done, then you have to be willing to listen to anybody else, whether it's Governor Roden or whether it's the Senate. Look at their plans, and at the end of the day, we need to put something together because we are here to serve the people of South Dakota.
Yeah, the property tax programs that we're looking at, the package includes the targeted relief, which was SB 96, and then statewide relief, which is the 245, the quick relief, which is the 1051, the education funding bill, and then the predictability, which is HB 1253, and transparency, which we call HB 1323. So we're taking a combination of a lot of different thoughts and putting them together. And it is exactly like the other assistant majority leader said, there's give and take in this. And if one of us tries to do this all on their own, we could probably fail. But if all of us stand together, it's just like the strands. If you have the strands, 3 strands together, you're pretty strong. And we're putting the strands together, and we will be strong, and we will have a property tax bill and a property tax program that people can be proud of. People have asked for it, and it is difficult to be able to give relief to everybody as they want it, but we're gonna do the best we can to do the best job we can in all areas.
Switching gears, because I'm working on this as a story today, there's a bill that's going to establish a statewide cell phone ban. There's different thoughts about how it can help people focus, but also, on the other hand, overlapping school control, maybe safety as far as being able to get in contact with parents. Did anybody have any strong thoughts about that?
Is that Senate Bill 198, Senator Carr's bill? I think
Yeah.
you're referring to.
Carr and Rayfeld's.
Yeah, so, yeah, we discussed that, and we had a task force that examined that a couple years ago, which was AI and age verification and cell phone policies in schools. And I happened to work on that subcommittee, and we polled a lot of school administrators, and there was a significant portion of them that really wanted the state to take the wheel on that issue. And we've discussed it. I think that bill is pretty good because it requires each school district to have a policy. It doesn't necessarily tell them what the policy has to be. But I think when you look at the test scores that we've been seeing lately in math, reading, and science, and compare that with the amount of general fund dollars that go through K-12 education from the state, I think maybe it's time that we weigh in on what I think everybody agrees is a common sense policy, because the data shows how distracting and disruptive that is to learning and discipline in the schools. So hopefully that bill will make it through. But I would also add that if you look at probably a very large percentage of the school districts in South Dakota probably would be unaffected. We had a Cracker Barrel and Sully Buttes, and they have a policy in place, and they would be unaffected by that bill, and I think that would be the case among most school districts.
Yeah, we smoked that out yesterday, I believe. And although I never really try to predict what the House does, if you look, I think it had 50 votes to get calendared. So, you know, it's probably got some legs to go someplace. But yeah, I think what Leader Melhoff said, that I think most schools in my district anyway already have a plan. I'm not saying they're crazy about it, but I haven't heard too many administrators hollering at me about this and that, because most of them have a plan.
As long as you're asking questions about schools, school violence, HB 1262 came out of the House, and that was a bill to have another center similar to Sioux Falls and Rapid City up in the northeast South Dakota. And it wasn't a large ask, but it was an ask nevertheless. And we're doing some right things to make things happen for these kids. And this would be for the younger kids that are causing some issues in our schools. And we're taking care of it in the South, but we need to take care of it, and we're also in the West, but we need to also take care of it in the North. And there's a lot of cost involved if we don't take care of it, with sending people down to the other locations, and then it gets into we're making this location fuller and this location fuller. This will take away some of the stress for the entire system. So 1262 is a good bill.
The school lunch appropriation is up in Senate appropriations this morning. And I just wondered if the Senate has any position on that, or if you as Senate leaders of the Republicans have any position on that.
Well, the one thing we were talking earlier, the one thing I know I have ultimate control over is my yay or nay. I don't have control over anybody else's. I don't particularly like that bill. I certainly understand why it's being brought. It pulls at the right heartstrings, I think, but at the end of the day, for me, if you're gonna have kids, you need to be responsible for feeding them, and the state shouldn't be taking up the responsibility for folks who aren't able to do it. I would like to see something like that done locally. In fact, I'm looking into starting a nonprofit locally that people would voluntarily contribute to hopefully address that need of hungry kids in our schools.
I'm gonna be a yes, because it is going to add, I think the number was $500,000 or $600,000 into the system. Is that close? Yeah. And I'm kind of a softie, because I think that we need to do everything we can to take care of our youth. And I was young a long time ago, and I remember times where my mother was a single mother, and it was not always easy for our family to be able to survive. And you know, one of the things that really is helpful is these type of programs. Is it overreach? Could be. Are there people that are gonna say no? Absolutely. But there are people that will say yes, and I'll be one of those.
There's a perfect illustration of what I control and what I don't.
I've got one last question, and I hate to drag us back into the thicket of property taxes, but on 1323, it increases the referral period by 10 days. That seems like, to me, a fairly modest idea that would be a relief valve for a lot of angst that's out there. What are the objections to just that increase?
I don't think we've hit a lot of objections on that.
I think what the angst is not so much the extra 10 days, I think of what it all applies to. It applies to every single resolution passed by any body. So it just kind of casts a shadow over the, you know, kind of the custodial operation of local governments, you know, platting streets, zoning, salary policy for municipalities and counties. Everything would become subject to that referral and that extension. And I think that's where most of the angst is. I don't think it's over the extra 10 days.
Well, I had none. I thought it was a great bill. In fact, I liked the 20 days. I think that's where the bill started out, but the representative, you know, worked with the people to go down to 10. I think it should be a really scary red flag when government is scared of a extra 10-day look before they spend taxpayers' money. To me, that's really scary, and I'd look even harder if someone fought me on that. So I thought the bill was great. I think it's great government for a small state, and yeah, I supported it, and I was happy to.
I guess, not that I really buy into the argument, but a lot of people are saying that these timelines have been around for over a century, so like, why are we changing them? It's kind of just, I guess, I'm not saying I understand where they're going with that, but that's what they're saying.
Why do we change? Oh, I'm sorry. Why do we, well, change happens. You can look at all laws and say, well, they've been around since the we change. Life changes, and we've never spent this kind of money of taxpayers before. Just the difference of fixing a road now compared to 10, 15 years ago is millions of dollars, and doing stuff, and there's less money. So government has to be more transparent on where they're spending the taxpayers' money. If the taxpayers need another 10 days to do something, I have no problem with that at all.
I would just jump into this conversation. I know some of the people that have been involved in some of these referendums. They have worked very hard and very quickly, and sometimes it is really hard, especially in our state, even with weather. sometimes to get everybody together and have a period of time that you can get out and get signatures and get people involved. So I don't think it's for a lack of effort that some of these things, that they haven't been able to sometimes get these done, but it's just, they just don't have the time, especially in our larger metropolitan areas like Sioux Falls and maybe Rapid City. So I think a 10-day extra period of time is completely reasonable.
I would just add, I think a lot of the angst that comes from this, and I think it's probably more of a southeast problem than it is somewhere else. The amount of opt-outs they've had with the public schools down there, and then the size of the voter base, 5% of the registered voters is a very large lift. And when you only have 20 days to do it, it becomes nearly impossible. I don't think it's an issue around most of the rest of the state, but I think that's where the hot coals are on that issue, and that's why they're looking for additional time to refer opt-outs.
I'm sorry to keep you here. I just wanted to ask Ms. Lenz one more question. Like, your running mate last year passed a bill that shortened the amount of time to collect signatures to have something put on the ballot, and now the timeline is largely over the winter. I don't remember exactly your voting record on that. I'm not saying you agree with him on everything, but did you agree with him on that?
Yes, I believe I did, but obviously that was a different issue, different timeline than what we're talking about here. This is a very short timeline to get the number of signatures required for this specific issue. And so, we're adding 10 days. And so I believe this is a different issue than what that was. So that's what I would say on that.
Going back to HB 1323, this is going to make it easier to refer property tax increases to a vote of the people. We're here for the people. We're here for the constituent. This makes it better for them. If things are better for the constituent, then we should be for it. And then the other thing on this is when you were gathering signatures for these referendums, it sounds really simple, 10 days, but that's a 50% increase in the amount of time that you have with current law. It's a good thing.
Senator Perry and I have to get to Commerce Committee, so thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We're late, Carl.
I've been late before. This is our last day of that, so.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Megan, good question. Thank you. Thank you.